to Hello, everybody online, and hello to my live audience member. Thank you for coming. This is our first of 4 of our podcast series, and I see people online here. If you have any questions, you could leave them in the chat. So I'm basically running on Zoom as well as on YouTube. And what we're doing is we're doing an installment of conversations about the interludes of an artist. Now, most times when we talk about the artist, we talk about their craft, we talk about their upbringing, but I think that is about more than that. I'm just going to unmute myself here. Hi, Zoom people. So most of you all are on YouTube, and I welcome both of you, both of the audiences as well as the live audience. This is really a recording of our Juicy Interludes podcast. It's our first ever podcast at the library, and it will also be available on the library's YouTube channel after this. So, like I said, the journey of an artist is full of so many things, ups and downs. Most times we talk about the craft, but we don't talk about the in-between of an artist and the various things that they go through, etc. Juicy Interludes first started in 2019 as just a podcast for opera where Angela, she's one of the hosts, talked to many opera singers about their lives and their ins and outs of their career. However, we had no idea that 2019 was coming. 2020, we started in 2019, and then 2020 came and we had the pandemic, and it just changed life for everybody. But I decided to open this up to not only performing artists, but visual artists as well. Just to show you from an analytical standpoint of what is an artist. Most times when people think of artists, they think of them as being a visual artist, but they're not. They are also people who are skilled in their performance. As you see here, a person skilled in any of the arts, perhaps. Also a skilled performer. So it could be in a musical setting or a theatrical setting, or it could also be in the visual arts. And when we think of the arts consist of 2 things. It consists of the performing artist as well as the visual artist, okay? And we tend to think that these artists are different. They're different in what they produce, but they are not different in who they are and how they run their lives as artists. And one of the things that you have to think about as an artist, you have to think about how much do you charge for your artwork? Where do you get your start, etc. And I think that from all sectors of the arts, we can learn lots of things about our artists. I can't stress this enough that the career outlook of an artist varies for many. And you're not going to be able to really see this because it's not clear, but on the recording, it will be clear because obviously this is going to be cropped out. But just to show you from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the highest as far as who would be hired from now to 2030, the highest of who would be hired, I'm just going to stop sharing so you can see me, is a visual artist, a graphic artist. And the reason why, I'm just going to, if you could, I'm going to show this gallery here. There, you can see me. The reason why an artist who is a visual artist and who's a graphic designer would be hired more is because of we're in a digital world, the internet, websites, small businesses are using graphic designers. They would be the highest as far as with the opportunity for their work to be known, obviously. Musicians are in between because obviously musicians, not that they're not high in demand, but they are not as high in demand as a graphic artist. So those are the two differences. With a graphic artist, if I have a small business, I can use a graphic artist for logo design, website design. Even in fashion, I can use a graphic artist. So if you are in the visual arts, you may have a better hand on what's happening today. Musicians are used in various ways, but there are various levels that musicians are used. From the highest of the high as far as attention, like a Beyonce or a Taylor Swift, to a community performer as well as a church performer. There are many levels of usage. And our special guest tonight is somebody who is so talented and so gifted in what she does. I cannot even, as they say, I can't even bring to words how at all I am every time I speak to her and how I am mesmerized by her path. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a video. I'm doing this weird thing where I am sharing my screen, and let me just stop sharing my screen because I see here that the live people, you see this here. So now you see me. I'm going to share my screen where you can see who this woman is, okay? Let me share here. And I'm going to just do this here. And from current screen, as I say, bear with me. All of this will not be in the recording. But I'm going to just, you can see this on the screen here. And I'm going to do like an advanced sharing option because I know that, all right, here we go. Here we go. We're going to go here. And I'm going to get Angela's screen here. Here we go. Here is Angela Renée Simpson. Now, if you all see anything else on your screen from home, that is all going to be changed by the time we edit this. Here we go.
My name is Angela Renée Simpson. I am an opera singer. To be honest, I don't sing much right now, which is okay. I have made my career singing the role of Serena in many productions of Porgy and Bess, many productions. I made my La Scala debut singing Serena. And I've sung in just about every major opera house in the United States. I've been in the business over 30 years. I have not had the traditional career. My career is far from traditional. I did not go through that much. I went straight to work. I went straight from school. I did not get my undergrad degree. I left maybe about 2 semesters before I would graduate. And I decided to put myself out there in the world as an opera singer. And 6 months later, I got my first professional gig outside of school, singing in Porgy and Bess at the Metropolitan Opera back in 1989.
I would love to introduce to you Angela Renée Simpson. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. As I said, all of this is new, and I'm going to turn on Angela's screen or your video. And I'm just going to ask you to start your video, and then I'm going to stop mine. Hey, Angela. I don't see, like, is your lighting on?
I know it got dark here. Let me see what I can do here.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
No problem.
I'm going to turn that screen off. Hold on.
Okay. And for the people on YouTube, if you have any questions, I have my phone up here. So if you have questions, please, after, you can also put it in the YouTube channel.
Okay.
That's a lot better.
Okay, there we go.
How are you, Miss Angela?
I'm fine. How is everybody? Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I wanted to start with this because your path as an artist you said you haven't had the traditional career.
Mhm.
And by not having the traditional career, do you think that I know that this is not one of the questions that I asked you, but just to start this out, and then I'll get to the questions. By not having and let me just hold on one second, because I also am looking at the screen and I have to get get the screen out here so that the people in the audience can see you. Let me just get out of here. Okay, now they can see us. Thank you. All right, all of this is new. By not having a traditional career, do you think that this that it helps your perspective as an artist? Seeing, how do I explain it? When you speak to the young singers, the younger singers of today, by not having a traditional career, does it help you with your perspective? Because I know that you have a lot of experience doing master classes with other professionals and how they speak to the younger singers. But does that change your perspective, do you think, versus somebody that had the traditional career? That makes sense.
I would say yes and no, because I didn't do the traditional path of, graduating, getting my bachelor's, and then getting my master's, and then doing the young artist program. It just got me in the working path a little sooner. I try to explain to the kids, what this business is about. The difficulties, not just the adulations. The adulations are wonderful. The other part of traveling is wonderful. Yeah, it changes my perspective in a way. No one told me when I was in school. I had no one to tell me about this career. I don't want to give anything away until you start asking your questions, but no one told me. So one of my main passions is informing the kids while they're still in school, letting them know. So and not to sugarcoat it at all.
Well, we'll get into that. So now that's a great lead on into this. If no one told you, what inspired you to become an opera singer?
Oh, I had no, I wasn't supposed to be an opera singer. That's not what I intended to do. I've been singing since I was 3 years old, and I love music. I love good singing. I've always loved good singing. My ear always turned toward hearing other singers that were really, 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 really good. And I grew up watching movie musicals. That's what I grew up watching. And that's what I.
Uh-oh. Hello? I think I lost you. Say that again. I think I lost you.
Okay, that's what I wanted to do when I was a kid. I wanted to sing in a movie. I thought it was the two best movies. I love movies and I love singing. So I thought all the movie musicals I used to watch: Wizard of Oz, Sound of Music. Oh gosh, every single Barbra Streisand musical movie I've seen like 150 times. That's what I wanted to do. And as I got older, of course, the industry changed. They stopped doing that. And so when I was in college, I got accepted into my college in their vocal voice program. I said, I'll give it a couple of years. I didn't have any desire to sing musical theater. I didn't have a desire to do that. But I said, I'll give it a couple of years. It's classical music. I had some instruction in high school. Luckily for me, I had instruction in high school. I said I'll give it a couple of years. If I didn't like it, then I would move on to musical theater. And I heard VZ Dorothy being sung by Leontine Price on the Blue album.
Remember that?
And then it was over for me. I said, that's what if she can look like me and do that, then I can do that too. And that's how I got into opera.
Now, how did you get your start in the opera career? I know you say it in the video, the intro video, but I want you to take us there when you started doing the professional opera track.
Okay. Well, my very first professional job, I was still in school. Really? I was hired by the Queens College Choral Society, the director,
that's okay.
They were getting old, I forget things. Lawrence Eisen, Dr. Eisen, that's his name. I had to audition. He was doing the Bach Magnificat and the Handel's I can't remember names. Anyway, he needed an alto. I was singing mezzo at the time. He needed a mezzo for these oratorios. And I had to audition. It was a paid gig. I was in my 5th year of college. Program was hard. You couldn't graduate in that program in 4 years unless you went to school every summer. So of course I had to work to pay for tuition. So anyway, but that was my first professional gig. I was scared to death, but I did it. Yeah, it was my first professional. Then after that, that's when sometime after that, I decided to leave school. And I started taking lessons with my voice teacher that I had. His name is Dr. Robert White. And I was having a private lesson in his studio with him. And he informed me that the Metropolitan Opera was having an open call for the Porgy and Bess chorus.
Wow.
And he said, since now you're out of school, he said, now comes real life. He said, I want you to go and audition. And I went, I had my resume, had my picture. I got there were dozens and dozens of people who look like me, African Americans. I can hear them warming up, I can hear these voices, and I was so intimidated. So intimidated, I almost left. But I promised him that I would go in and audition. And so when I got to the table, as an artist, they tell you have to have your resume, you have to have your picture, your publicity photo, and all that. They didn't want that.
Really?
All they did, really, I was very shocked. There was a woman sitting at a table. She asked me what my name was. I gave her my name. She asked for voice type. She asked me what song I was going to sing, and she asked for my phone number. That is it. They didn't want a picture. They didn't want a resume. They didn't want anything. And I was really gobsmacked by that because as a student, they tell you have to prepare for stuff like this.
Yes, they do.
And me thinking I'm at the Metropolitan Opera. The Metropolitan Opera. No, they didn't want that. They didn't want it. Now, it could have been because it was a cattle call. It was a call, it was for extra chorus because they were doing Porgy and Bess. It could have been that, but I was just really surprised. So, needless to say, I auditioned. My audition is a whole other story I'm not going to get into. It's such a funny story. I'm not going to get into that. But I auditioned, and that was in, I want to say, in February of 1980.
Angela, you paused. Okay, got it.
I'm sorry. February 1989, then by April, I got a phone call telling me I was hired.
I would just say that Angela is known in the industry. She is known as one of the legendary Serenas in Porgy and Bess. And it's unforgettable. I do opera talks, and whenever I do Porgy and Bess, I always feature Angela as Serena.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, I did not. I didn't want you to know that till now. I always feature Angela. But Angela, just another question that I wanted you to really talk about what are the lessons that you learned about the professional opera career that surprised you? You said one with the pictures and stuff, well, for that, but just in general.
Ooh, they don't tell you about the traveling.
Mm.
Now, I'm about to go on to my 4th passport.
Wow.
Passport number 4. Yeah. The traveling is wonderful. You get to see places that you've never seen before. I have traveled to countries I never ever thought that I would get the opportunity to travel to. But the other side of that is that you miss family things. You miss personal things. You miss birthdays, you miss weddings, you miss anniversaries, you miss holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. You miss these things because you have to work.
Mm.
You have a contract. You've obligated yourself to that contract, and you have to. I must have missed. Ooh, I want to say in my whole career, probably about anywhere to, and I've been singing over 30 years, so I would say maybe about 15 to 16 holidays with my family.
Wow. Wow.
Major holidays, because I was away working. They don't tell you about that. They don't tell you about living out of a suitcase,
Mm.
living in a hotel. Sometimes, and now this, I'm back from the olden days. The olden days, the companies took care of you. They paid for your travel, they paid for your housing, they gave you per diem and a salary. So nowadays that's changed. But I am part of that. I've gone through that transition. So sometimes you're paying, as an artist, you're paying rent in 2 places. You're paying the rent that's in your domicile where you live, or mortgage where you live, and paying for the rent at an Airbnb or an apartment that you're renting because you're in a different city performing. Taxes.
Oh, yes, we're going to talk about that.
No one told me about taxes. Oh gosh. And it can, let me say, it can be a lonely profession. It can be a lonely profession. It's just you taking care of you in some respects. That's not the case for everyone. Some people are still doing this and they're married or they're in a relationship. But it's sometimes before you have the blinders on, and you're going from job to job to job to job to job to job. Mental health.
Oh, yes.
No one talked about that. No one talked about, now we talk about self-care. There was no such thing as self-care back then. You got time to, if you wanted a vacation, you had to plan a vacation. You had to say, I'm not taking a contract for this couple of months or whatever because I'm going on vacation or something like that. So it's a lot of different things that surprised me.
Now, back in the day when you started, right? When you started with the living expenses, can you just talk about that? Like, what was it like before? I know now you're paying more as an artist, but back in the day, what was it like?
Back in the day, the company paid for everything. Company paid your travel. They paid your airline tickets. They paid for your hotel or that you stayed in, especially.
You gotta come back in.
Right.
Say that.
They did a lot of tours back then. So I was on tour quite a bit. So most of the time I was staying in hotels. So they paid you your salary, your fee of what you would get paid, and they paid you a per diem. That's the money that you would spend on food, that kind of thing, paying for your meals and things like that. You got paid once a week. You got your salary once a week. Everything was, now, again, the airline ticket, all that was economy. The hotel, if you're staying in a hotel, it was usually a Ramada Inn or a hotel, a Holiday Inn, that kind of thing. It wasn't anything fancy, but
Right.
or it was an efficiency that had a kitchen, that kind of thing, where you can cook and take care of yourself, do your laundry, all that stuff. Yeah, everything was taken care of. Everything was taken care of, and you received your salary. Some people were very inventive, whereas they would pocket their per diem and save that. That's money they would take home with them, and they found a way to budget, to go grocery shopping and budget and make meals that they can, cook at home instead of going out to eat, that kind of thing. Um, yeah, everything was really, back then, everything was really taken care of. You didn't really have to worry about too much.
That's
Now,
not the case
let me
now.
say, the salaries were different than they are today. I would say that it's because of inflation. Now the salaries were much smaller, but even at that period of time, it was still quite a bit of money that you were, so.
I'd like to ask you this: what are the myths about being an opera artist? I think you had mentioned it earlier, but just to talk about, when you tell people that I sing opera, I know from working behind the scenes in opera, there's a grandiosity that's attached to that. But what are some of the myths, just not only that, but in general, about being an artist?
That is glamorous.
Yeah.
It's not. Again, they don't do tours too much these days, but it was, you did your show, you got up the next morning to either fly or get on sometimes it was a bus and truck tour, which was a bus that they would hire to take you from city to city. But you would have to get on a flight, or get on the bus get up at 7 to catch a 9 o'clock flight, or leave around 9 o'clock. It's and then travel and do a show that night.
Wow.
Yeah. So you did get time off. Let me just say, you did get time off. A lot of the shows that I did were double cast. So, and if you were principals, the principals were double cast. The ensemble, unfortunately, was not. So ensemble was always on every performance. But as a principal, I would have nights off. So you would switch out different nights. So that you had a rest in them. But the other myths. Now, let me say this. There's nothing like the applause of an audience. There's nothing like it. You being on stage and singing the best that you've ever sung, not best you've ever sung, but you did your best. You gave everything you could to an audience, and they were appreciative. There's nothing like it. And that's always what they show or talk about in some respects when it comes to this career. But it's hard. It's hard. It can be hard emotionally, it can be hard physically, it can be hard financially. Everybody's path is different. But I think some of the things I've mentioned, like I said, I'm old school. So I remember what it used to be like in the day. And I know what it's like to be an artist now. It's hard work. Sometimes it's just trying to make ends meet. And continue and still have a career in this art form.
Do you think that also, because you said emotionally, it can be hard. Do you think that the emotional part is, because most times when people think of artists, they think that the emotional part is tied to the craft itself. But what other, like emotionally, what does it look like? Why is it difficult emotionally? I know why, but I just want you to say it.
The audition part. You work, you study, you work real hard, you sing this, you know this aria, and you go in and you know you're gonna get it. You know you sing this the best, and you don't get hired. That's happened to me dozens of times. Dozens of times that's happened to me. I knew I could sing Serena. I knew I could sing this role, and it was one particular director who would never hire me. He would always hire me as a cover, as an understudy. Never hired me as in the role until he was forced to because someone dropped out.
Wow.
But it's you have to remember it's not a rejection of you, and it's not a rejection of your craft or your talent. It could be anything. And just to elaborate on that story, the director who would not hire me, he finally told me, I didn't ask him, he told me on his own. When I finally got the role under his direction, and had already staged my part and did my part, he came to me and apologized to me. And he said the reason why he never hired me, because he thought I was too young, that I could not play a mother. He thought that I couldn't, a woman with children who had a husband. He thought that I didn't have that experience, so I couldn't act it out.
Wow.
See, so you never know why someone's not hired. It could be your hair color, it could be your height, it could be anything. It could be anything. Not just, you can sing rings around, you could sing Gilda all day long. But if you're not a Gilda with actual pale skin and red hair, that's not what the director's looking for.
Mm-hmm.
It could be anything.
Yeah.
You know, it could be, like I said, it could be height, it could be, just like out of the blue, like this director, didn't think I could act the role, even though I sang it well. So.
And yeah, that could be, yeah. So what would you tell a young artist who is going through that type of emotional toil about, I did the best that I could and I still didn't get the role and I gotta pay bills too. That too.
Yeah. Okay. So I heard something I found this video of Michael Keaton, the actor Michael Keaton. And I thought, and I would love, I'm saying this to young students. I haven't said it to a master class yet because I haven't taught one in a minute, but anybody who's listening, he said he's an actor and he would go on auditions, but he didn't go to auditions to think he was getting the job. He considered the auditions work, actual work, that he was getting up. He had an audition that day, he had 3 auditions. He was getting up to go to work. And so, and when you put in that mindset, that when you go into audition, you're working, even though you're not getting paid, but you're working. You're getting your craft out there. You're getting your voice out there. You're letting someone hear what you sound like. You may not get that part, but maybe down the line, they'll remember your audition. So don't take your auditions personally. Never take your auditions personally. Never take them as if they're not actually looking you in the eye, if they're writing in their notes, if they're drinking their cup, whatever they're doing. Just go in there, be the best you can do, sing the best to your ability, and walk out knowing you left doing a good job, and then move on to the next thing, and forget about the audition. Go on to the next audition. Now, that's a whole other story about trying to pay your bills. That's a whole other story. That's a whole other section.
Right, because I know when you were saying that, you said it could be emotionally hard, physically hard, financially hard. So just to touch a little bit on that, because down the line, we're going to do another episode about the finance part. But just to explain to like a young artist or even an emerging artist, financially, because I know you were saying like the glamour and the grandness, but just explain about a little bit about the financial part.
was still doing those tours, even back in the day, I was still doing those tours, but I was still doing temp work. When I wasn't singing, I was doing temporary work as an executive assistant for all kinds of different companies. I worked for an editor of a publishing company. I worked for a VP for a textiles company. I worked for a VP for an advertising agency. I had to pay my rent. I had to pay my rent. I had to pay my bills. And I did temp with it, but their gigs weren't coming in. I went to my agency. You know, I would do, let's say this, I would do a gig, have my money, and not thinking about taxes now, not thinking about taxes. You know, I got paid a lump sum of money, in my mind, that lump sum was mine, and I'm gonna spend it and do what I need to do. So,
Yeah.
so that's a whole, we'll talk about that in the next episode. But I would still go to work. That money only lasts for so long. So you gotta constantly have money coming in. So yeah, financially it's hard. It's hard. You have to pay for your lessons. You have to pay for your coachings. If you're a young artist, or you know, if you want to do a competition, young artist program, you have to pay those application fees, which are exorbitant, from what I understand. They
Yes,
never used
they
to
are.
cost that much.
Yes.
You know, when I was coming in. You have to pay your light bill, your water bill, your gas bill, your cell phone, your internet. You know, you have to pay for these things, and you have to have constant. Look, the career is very in these times. It's very rare for a singer to have contract after contract after contract after contract after contract after contract after contract. And I'm not talking, even, let me just say this, even for those stars.
You're right. You're right.
Even for those stars, we don't know, they don't put on Facebook that they're not working.
They never do.
They're not gonna tell you that. They're not gonna tell you that this contract didn't go through. Or of course they're not auditioning. You know, these people who are, the star, I put stars quotes because there's some people who are stars in Europe and some people who are stars here in the States, but they're not gonna put on Facebook, if they're not singing or doing a contract, they're gonna put on how they're relaxing in their garden. You know, that kind of thing. That look, let me tell you something. It's a constantly hustling. You are constantly hustling. I don't care if you're singing in the upper echelons of every major house, or if you're singing in a regional house, you are constantly hustling. Okay, to get that next job, to get that next gig. And even if you are a quote unquote star, if you're not doing this project, you're doing another project that you're trying to say you're recording an album, which you have not been paid for yet.
Oh gosh, tell us about that.
So you
have not been paid.
You're putting together this new album, blah blah blah, and I'm not privy to that. I've never had an album of just me solo. From what I understand, you get I have been on albums.
Yes.
I get a lump sum and that's it. That's it. I don't get points, I don't get residual checks, I don't get any of that. I get a lump sum of money and that's it. The record company continues to make money from that recording.
What about when you're on PBS, specifically for the performers who are on PBS? I wonder if they do give you a lump sum and then that's it.
Okay, so it depends on the contract. AGMA is the union rep for musicians, for singers. It depends on the wording of the contract. So I was on Live from Lincoln Center with New York City Opera performing Porgy and Bess, and I got paid a lump sum per performance. So for that particular night where it was live, my contract stipulated I got another full payment of a performance for that live performance. And that was it. Now, if Live from Lincoln Center decides to put it on
Come back.
that particular performance,
Yeah.
if they decide to play that performance, I would get a check. As to how much that would be, I don't know. And I'm not sure.
Angela, say that again, because you froze up, because we're gonna edit that
Okay.
stuff out when we in the recording. But you said
Okay.
Live at Lincoln Center were to put it on again.
Yes, if they were put on my performance of Porgy and Bess again, I would get a check, but I don't know how much that would be. It's been, that's been years ago. That was back in 2002. So, but I've had checks come in when my performances, the audio part of my performances have been played on NPR. I've gotten a check, that kind of thing. And so I think with AGMA, or when there is a recording, you're gonna pay the lump sum, but if that recording is played again in either audio or visual, it's been stipulated that you receive another payment. It may not be the full payment that you receive, the same payment you see the initial time, because this is over time. So years later, or a couple of years, or 3-4 years later, but you will get some kind of fee for that. PBS, what was I gonna say? I did the Live from Lincoln Center, but the PBS, I'm thinking about, I don't think they do Live from Lincoln Center anymore, do they?
They don't do it as much
No.
anymore, no.
No, they don't do as much anymore, but I have seen performances, from the Met on PBS.
Yes.
I'm sure that has been negotiated, that they receive, a fee. I did a musical theater when I was doing Showboat. I did it in major opera houses across the country. San Francisco was one of them. San Francisco decided to turn it into a video.
Yes, they did.
And yes, in the video. So, and that too, I received a lump sum for that bit, for making that video. Now, if the video is played somewhere else, if it's shown somewhere else, I will eventually get a check. Don't know how much that will be, but if someone decides maybe Live from Lincoln Center decides, or PBS decides to put it on, I would definitely get a check for something like that. So.
Well, thank you. I just want to let you all know that Angela is a Renaissance woman. And I said, listen, this is our first recording of this version. And I wanted so bad to show that she also does voiceover. And the other night I was like, hey, when did you do the 7-Eleven commercial? She did a 7-Eleven commercial, the voiceover for that. It's on YouTube.
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna edit this, because again, this is a recording that we're gonna play again. But before I get into the last question, what are some things that you like with your career? How have you parlayed your career in other things like the voiceover, etc.?
Well, as you heard in the tape, in the introduction video, I don't sing that much anymore. If I'm singing, it's usually with my students. So I have my own studio, the Simpson Vocal Studio. It's all online. I work with people from all across the country, beginners to professionals. My niche is preparing students for audition. Mainly college auditions. I prepare my students for college auditions. The high school students for their upcoming vocal auditions for college to get into a voice program. I've gotten every student I've ever worked with, I've gotten them into the school they wanted. So I decided to make that, I do that really well, so I decided to make that my niche. But I still teach all types of singing. And it's all different genres. I still have my studio. I also, as you mentioned, I studied during the pandemic, which everybody should have done, was find another vocation. I've always wanted to do voiceover. I did a TV pilot way back in the day, a CBS TV pilot. They were looking for a singer to sing Precious Lord. They had the actress, but she couldn't sing a lick. So they ended up using my voice. They hired me to sing, And they used my voice. So I loved it. It was being in the studio. I got paid a lump sum of money just to be there for like an hour. And I said, this is good. I want to do this. But back then, it was all male dominated.
We say that again?
The voiceover was male dominated. There was no way for it was a rarity for a woman to get in. All the commercials, all the stuff were always men's voices. So I gave it up. But during the pandemic, I found that a friend of mine, and I'll name her, Heather. Oh my gosh, I hate getting old. You forget last name. A good friend of mine, Heather, had mentioned that she was taking a 6-week class on voiceover, and I was like, oh. I'm sitting here, I'm having my teaching business. It's pandemic, we're all inside. I said, everything is voice Zoom now. So let me look into this. I did the 6 weeks and then I decided to invest in myself. It's an investment. It was a big investment. Invest in myself to study voiceover. It took me 14 months. And that was during the whole pandemic. And by the time I finished, things started to open up again. But before then, a lot of voiceover was done in the studio. But now everyone had their home studio, so they continued with that trend and let everyone record from home. It was easier and it was cheaper. And so after I finished, I got from gig to gig, a couple of gigs here, a couple of gigs there. I called myself. I love Viola Davis's voice on commercials. She does a Delta commercial a lot. So I called myself, if Morgan Freeman, who also does voiceover, if Morgan Freeman and Viola Davis had a baby, that would be me. That's my voice. So I made my money back. The money I invested in myself doing and being hired to do voiceovers, I made my money back. So that's 2 ways I'm using my voice. I'm teaching and I'm doing voiceover. And then my good friend, Miss Tanisha Mitchell, asked me to be the host of a new podcast. And here I am using my voice again. Now doesn't necessarily have to, it's still creative, not necessarily singing, but I'm using my voice in another manner. So call me a Renaissance woman.
She is. And she's interviewed during the pandemic, she's interviewed 5 opera singers. The first one, it was Kevin Short, and it was pre-pandemic. It was December 2019. And then all of a sudden, you know what, fell apart. And then, all of us were shut in. But it's very interesting in Angela and how she speaks to the opera singers, because obviously she's connected with them as far as with the vocation. But the questions that she asked, and also dealing with them during a time where they were not working. Nobody who did that type of performance worked. But as you say, I'm not going to keep you because all this stuff is going to be edited out. That's the great part about recording. But because I know it's World Series tonight. Anyway, with all of the things that you have been doing with your career, do you believe that you stop being an artist if you no longer perform or I put paint because for the other artists who are going to hear this also, but if you no longer do your artistry as a vocation and you parlay it into other things, do you think that you are still an artist as you do
Absolutely.
that? Yeah.
Absolutely. We're creating. Artists create. You, as an artist, you never, whether you're singing, whether you're painting, sculpting, writing, dancing, we create. We continue to create. Working with students, you're creating new performers. My voiceover, I'm creating commercials or creating an explainer video. I just want to mention this big thing. I got my voice on a exhibit in a museum. Can you imagine? That will be there forever. That will be there forever. I was so excited about that. It's the International African American Museum in Charleston, South Carolina.
Thank you. I was going to ask you to mention it. Yes.
Yes. And so you're still creating something. We never stop creating. And let me just say this: you don't have to be an artist to create.
Say that again. We got it. You stopped a moment. We got to come back in. You froze.
I'm sorry. You don't have to be an artist to create. We're human beings. We create every single day.
That is interesting. Would you say that we're all artists then? In our own way? We're all artists.
We're all artists in our own way. And we're all artists. I think we have the term artist because it's a vocation. You don't have to have an artistic vocation to create.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's going to be a short. I just want to to end this, because again, this was not meant to be long. I have 5 questions for artists to ask themselves, and of course, this is something that we'll discuss in the future. And the 5 things are this, and then as I ask the questions, Angela, you could always put your wisdom towards this. Number 1, do I find incredible joy in what I do as an artist? That's number 1. Do I find incredible joy? Do you like what you do? And as you are such an excellent example of loving what you do and bringing that love into different aspects of voiceovers and creation. Okay, this is one that I asked the question when we were talking privately. You were like, I want you to chime in. But the question is, do I desire my artistry to be my sole career? I know you. I see your face. And
okay, I'm gonna put my 2 cents in. Unfortunately, these days it can't be. It cannot be. That's just the truth. It cannot be, unless by some and let's say it doesn't happen. It does happen, but if you have to be booked. Now, opera, maybe some people may not know this. Opera singers are booked 2-3 years down the line. So now it's 2024. You have artists who are booked to 27, who have worked in 27. And that's not to say that work is not guaranteed, because we all know what happened with COVID. Those contracts were null and void, gone. So you cannot have that as your sole income. You have to find something else that you create or love to do that you can monetize.
So what do you say to people when mentors, when they tell artists that there's no such thing as a plan B? I've heard that before. This is the first time I'm hearing.
I've heard that. I don't know who said this. They're lying. There is a plan B.
I've heard that.
And a plan C, and a plan D, and a plan E. There is. You have to have it. Look, I learned my lesson. A lot of us artists learned our lesson in 2008 when the real estate bubble burst. When the real estate bubble burst and stocks went down, people were losing money left and right who had invested their life savings, their 401ks were gone, all this. So, and companies shut down. Orchestras shut down.
They did.
And people, you had contracts with them, that meant they shut down, you had no work. They went into bankruptcy. You had no work, you had no money. So you had to learn to find something else. I did. I started teaching them. That's when I started teaching. And I was working through a little academy that was locally it was in a church. And it wasn't a lot of money at all. But I started teaching and got my chops together and learned and not taught myself, but you know what I mean, started building my studio that way. So when COVID hit, I was like, oh, now see, I didn't have any contracts during COVID. I was lucky.
Oh yeah, I remember you were teaching.
I was teaching. Yes. I was teaching, and my teaching business blew up. Yes. Because everybody had all those stimulus checks, and all these folks were sitting at home, didn't know what to do, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm gonna take singing lessons. And when you realize you take singing lessons online,
Yep.
blew up. And I have to see the other thing, I already have been teaching online before COVID.
Yes, you were.
So I had already had that, So I was lucky in that respect. But you cannot put all your eggs in your artistry basket. You cannot. You have to find another talent that you have that you can monetize. Whether that's creating graphics, excuse me, writing, pottery.
Yep, no problem. I'm just going to go over with what you're saying, which is very interesting. The next question that I asked, and I thought about it, I said, I asked this question about an artist just doing one thing, but an artist does many things. And my question is for people who are listening to this episode, how much money would I like to generate annually as an artist? Now that vocation, again, it doesn't have to be one thing, like what you're saying. It could be a collective number of things that you do in what you're doing. So if you're thinking about yourself as how much money do you want to generate, it's not just singing, it could be other things as well. And that's what you had spoke about. And our last two questions, and then we're going to close this out. Am I willing to work another job or in another vocation to support my talent? You spoke about that very well. And then last but not least, for the artists who are listening, are there transferable skills that I can use in my job from my career or study as an artist? And Angela, you're doing that. You're the living embodiment of that by doing voiceover also and doing the teaching, etc. So I want to close this out. As they said, I don't want to keep you. I got that from Angela. She always says that. I don't want to keep you. But I want to thank you so much, Angela, for joining us. And if anybody has any questions, I would just ask that if you could please leave it in the chat. On YouTube, I'm looking at you from my phone. So if you have any questions on YouTube, I'm going to put in my email address. You could always ask the questions because they send me questions in my email. And then for our next episode, we will touch upon those things. There are more people on YouTube than there are on Zoom. But again, this will be available for people to listen to. So I don't see any questions here. And this is perfect. We ended at a good time. And Angela, when the recording is available, I will definitely send it to you. You can listen to it, and we will edit everything that we need so that the community can listen to it. Thank you so much, Angela. Thank you. And you're coming from what? DC, right? You're in DC.
I'm in DC right now, yeah.
Well, you enjoy yourself, and we'll talk later. All right.
All right.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay. So this is going to be, I gotta wait for this thing to download. This is going to be recorded. This is recorded, and then we're going to edit it. And then once we edit it, that's when it's going to be released to the community. Because the purpose of this is just to record it. And for people to come in and listen. Yeah.
She's lovely.
Angela is lovely. And we talk about this stuff all the time because I think that the stigma is that if you are somebody that's performing, that's all you do. Even if you're a painter, that is all you do. And if you do something else, I find that a lot of the artists that I deal with for the exhibits too, for the most part, everybody is great. But some of them have even asked me, what are some things that I can do with my art in order for me to blossom as an artist, because I feel like nothing is happening. And I don't think a lot of artists know it or they're willing to talk about it. And one thing about Angela, she's very on point about, like what she was talking about emotionally, how it can be difficult with the travel. and also financially, how you have to do other things in order to support yourself. So that's something that we're going to talk about. Yes.
Do you think as an artist with the exhibits, that's more of a hobby for a lot of people? That's not their profession.
I think that it's a hobby because it's forced to be a hobby from my experience dealing with the artists. I don't
Well,
think that
now in today's day, yes. I
yeah,
mean, if you go back 100 years or whatever with Monet or, you know, that was their career.
but a lot of the artists, I'm saying from what I've experienced with artists who have put the solo art shows, I can count on my fingers the number of people who are organized and they know how they want their artistry to be distributed. I find that most of the people that do it as a hobby don't want to do it as a hobby. They just don't know how. I've
So
worked
they're
with-
frustrated.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to say it like that, but I don't think they want to do it as a hobby.
Right.
I think they're doing it as a hobby because they don't know how to do it otherwise.
Well, they also need another job to survive.
Yeah, but then if you look at, see, that's where Angela and I, and we're going to talk about this in another episode. That's where she and I don't agree. I think that if you plan your career out, things happen. But if you have a plan of how you're going to take the steps, you're more than likely able to support yourself versus if you don't have a plan. I think that if you go in and you work and you put your head down and you're not organized about what you're doing, it's going to make it a lot harder for you to do that.
I agree.
And like with Angela and I, like that's where I think that's where we disagree. And we said later on, we'll talk about that. She thinks, like what she says, you can't do it by yourself. You can't do the vocation. And I don't believe that. I think you can. I think if you are a visual artist and you know that, okay, graphic design is what's popping right now, that's what's working, then you could get a job as a graphic designer and be a visual artist too.
Right, I agree.
I've seen many people do that, but I find that a lot of artists, they don't know which way to go. So they just say, oh, I'm just doing it as a hobby. They don't want to do it as a hobby. And it's
No, I
also-
mean, deep down, they want to do it.
Negativity. You can't think negative.
Right, see, I think that, yes, and like what you were saying, deep down, they want to.
They want to, but it's like a frustrating Broadway
Right.
actor
They
or
don't-
actress.
No, they
Most of them
weren't
are
taught
waiting
that way.
tables because the population of succeeding is very small compared to the
Yes.
amount of population that has that ambition, that wants to or inspired to perform on
And then
Broadway
Also,
or in the movies. You know,
right, and then the other thing too.
it's very difficult.
The other thing that we also ask ourselves is, what does success look like? See, what in opera is different now because we are way past Luciano Pavarotti. That's gone. The people who are singing now are working. The majority of singers are working singers. That's what they do. With artists, though, artists have a different. Visual artists have. I think they have way more opportunities because you have some visual artists who they were painting for a long time. Then all of a sudden there's art is on a TV show. And then people are like, wow, who's that art? Where's that artwork from? Or they paint a politician. You know, we look at Amy Sherrill. She painted Michelle Obama. She did her portrait. So it's the opportunities for a visual artist are a lot. There are a lot more opportunities versus for a musician.
Definitely, because that could be sent out through anywhere.
Any medium. Now, for a musician, when you're performing, nowadays we're in the social media climate. So you can sing something and put it on TikTok, and maybe it will go viral, maybe it wouldn't. But the social media climate, it has its own drawbacks. Because then if you're gonna go that route, it can work, but then you have to constantly be doing something with social media. Social media is a whole different animal.
Yeah.
With an upcoming episode we're gonna have is talking about social media, because you have to constantly be doing something. In 2014, if you did something and it went viral, then that meant a contract, that meant an appearance on the show. Now, that means nothing. Because how many things have we seen gone viral from 2014 to now? Many things. You have to keep pushing and keep
And
going.
again, if it does go viral, and you
Yeah.
see it on CBS News or here or whatever,
Yes.
the next day, it's something new.
It's something new.
You're forgotten
It's so fast. So, it's the climate that we're in, and it's also the way that we create content with our artistry. How do we do that? How do we distribute
There's also a
our
little bit
artistry?
of luck involved in it also.
There's
You have
luck
to be at
too.
the right place at the right
Yeah,
time.
right.
Like
But I
a turn
think-
being discovered or
I
whatever.
think too that nowadays, and one of the episodes that we're gonna do, we're gonna talk to a high school teacher. I don't think that the younger people think about luck in that sense now. They think about exposure. And if I can do something up here and continue to do it here, maybe the exposure will be here. And then maybe it could blossom into a gatekeeper. So it's changed quite a bit.
What's a gatekeeper?
A gatekeeper is someone who decides who is seen and who's not seen.
Oh, okay.
So a gatekeeper would be, I don't know, the person that runs Paramount,
Mhm, mhm.
somebody like that, or somebody who hires a person, a top person at Sony who hires talent. That's what a gatekeeper is. Or someone who runs a gallery, an art gallery. A gatekeeper is somebody like that. So sometimes, but I know someone who runs an art gallery in Lower Manhattan. It's called the Debunk Gallery, and it's right near the High Line. Beautiful artwork that she chooses. And I asked her last year, I said, how do you figure out who you're going to display? How do you do that? And she said, one of the things that she has to think about is, what are people going to buy? Because people buy things from
It should bet how
galleries.
money.
And how much is it going to be? Because they make money off of that. So she's the gatekeeper for a visual artist who not only wants their art to be seen, but they also want people to buy their art. So those are the people, and what's very interesting is that I was telling Angela, I said, isn't it crazy that the gatekeepers, most times, they're not performing or doing any of that. They're not performing or painting. They're doing the administrative work.
Right.
And they're the ones that make the most money in the industry.
It's almost like an agent.
It's like an agent.
Isn't it also where you put that painting?
Yes,
Right? Because I remember how many stories there were and how they visualized that, and being like in Soho or Tribeca behind the scenes sometimes where you're surprised that you are because things happen right away. It was amazing to me.
it's also, yeah, it's.
I
it's
wouldn't
rare.
think of that. But even the way Belle is, you could see her from all over. And it's so important.
Is where you put the painting,
Right.
is where, and for those who are artists, it's where who commissions you. You know, you have to look at that and how you get that. Because there is somebody deciding who is going to be commissioned and who's not. And even with when they did the two artists was Kehinde Wiley and Amy Sherrill, and they did Michelle Obama and Barack Obama's portrait. If you take the politics aside, just take that aside and look at the moment that it was for these two artists. These two artists were known, but they weren't known like that.
No.
And what it did for their careers, it just changed things. So then you have to ask, who was the gatekeeper in them the former first lady, former president choosing who these artists are? Somebody told the Barack and Michelle, these are the artists that we think you would like. And then they chose from that pool of the artists. So it's all of that. It's all of it put together. That's where the luck comes in.
Well, wasn't it also Michelle Obama's the one who made her dress?
That's
He was an
right.
unknown
That's
also.
Same
right.
here.
It was so
Absolutely.
important for her
Right, but
to
he
have
was an
somebody unknown,
unknown,
and
and he
I
became.
respected that so well.
See, the thing about it, but what's very interesting is the thing about fashion, and again, this is another conversation that we are going to have. Fashion has Vogue magazine, and fashion has music genres, etc. Even though that person was an unknown, by them being put up to that height of designing for Michelle Obama, now these other gatekeepers can see this person and say, hey, we're going to feature you in this fashion show, or Angelina Jolie wants you to design a dress. I'm just using it as an example.
Or this department store wants
This
that.
department store wants this and that. But with music and art, that's a whole other medium, because it's more flexible and then it's more flexible in how you are exposed, and then also what that exposure does for you. So that's why we have a lot of, I don't like to say it like that, but it's true. But we do have a lot of frustrated artists because it's so flexible and vast. It's like, what do you do next? Where do we go?
Also,
Where do I
don't you
turn?
think it's
Right.
the lyrics itself when somebody hears something and they like it? So
Yes.
they do a facsimile of it, but it's really the same thing. So they're,
Same
of
thing.
course you're gonna be upset.
It's the same thing. And again, the social media climate has changed.
Yeah.
It's the social media climate. We're going to talk about this in June because we have someone coming in. It's going to be a panel. The social media climate has changed creativity completely, because you can go on social media and do 15 seconds of something. It doesn't have to be singing. It could be painting. You could paint something for 15 seconds and millions of people could see it, but that doesn't translate to anything for you. It may not, or it may. I had an artist who, she had her artwork displayed here in April, and I think she's one of the most talented and most organized that I've ever seen. And on social media, she has, I think Maria has over 100,000 followers on social media, and she does videos. And let me see if I can find her. She actually does videos. Let me go to Instagram. She does videos of herself. That's me up there. I have to change that. I think her name is, and I know we had her here, artist Ria. She does videos of herself painting. There she is. Let's see if I can, 100,000 followers. And there's
Wow.
actually, we had her here in
Oh, I
April.
remember that. Yeah.
Yes, and
Yes.
she
You're
did,
right.
she did an
Because I
art.
And
remember
aren't they
that
her
one with the
portraits or
tail.
something?
I love the one with the
Yeah,
tail.
no,
See how she does her artwork up here? Okay. She told me that she has a store online, and she says even with the 100,000 followers in the store, she says she really has to stay on top of people asking for bargains and stuff like that because she's trying to make a living. I know that this isn't the only thing that she does to make a living, but she told me that it's not easy trying to get people to value her work. So again, it's just because you're on Instagram, you have the exposure, but then you have to take it a step further, you know. But yeah, her artwork is beautiful. I think
Wow.
we also put some of her art on the library's YouTube channel, and we're still live. But yeah, we put her art on the library's YouTube channel for people to watch. But yeah, it is what it is. I'm gonna stop the YouTube. I wish I could do it from my phone, but I can't. I can't do it.
Careful.
I mean, we tried to get on
Wow.
Instagram, but now we have to do the editing part. But thank you all for coming, and thank you
Kim, I
people
hate
on,
this stuff.
yeah, thank you people on YouTube. I'm closing it out.
Oh, we didn't know they were still on.
Yeah, but we'll edit it out.
Oh.
We're not gonna.
I'm always edited.